extremely thorough in the projects that we have worked on together, advancing not just transit, but also advancing key pieces of bike infrastructure and bike improvement as the Denver bike mayor. June has built an enormous amount of goodwill with people in the state legislature and in the governor's office. And I think that June is someone who, has given GDT a lot. And I would love it if GDT could come together and support June for this position.
All right, and now I'm going to give, before we do another support, I'm going to have an opportunity for anyone to speak against. Lucia?
So I love June. Everything you said is absolutely true. But I will be supporting Woodrow in this race because he has a proven track record in the legislation for getting great housing bills done, and he's got the experience. So what I'm hoping is he'll get it, and I would love for June to then go for his HD2 position, which I think she is an HD2. So anyway, I think that with as much as I love June, I think that the momentum is going to be behind Woodrow for the work that he has already done for some of our urbanist causes.
Thanks. Okay, and then I'm going to give an opportunity for a second person to speak in favor.
I'd like to.
Sure.
So first I want to echo actually what Lucia said. I am supporting Steve Woodrow for the election, and for all the reasons that Lucia just laid out. That being said, one of the most important things that a person can do in politics is show solidarity with the individuals who have shown up for them over and over and over again. Because if you don't stand up for your friends, you don't inspire loyalty among the next people who are going to want to work hard for you. So I think it is absolutely imperative that we endorse June to send a message that we stand by our friends 100% and that we will show up for you if you show up for us.
Okay, and then do we have a second person to speak against?
I'll speak for.
No.
We can't do 3 4.
I would not be very surprised.
Okay, so should we just hold a vote?
Yep, June.
Okay,
Please.
so raise your hand if you vote to endorse June Churchill for Senate District 31.
Ooh.
What's the count on
Let's
this?
count that 1, 2. Okay, I have 14.
Okay,
Let's do a show of nays.
and raise your hand to vote against June Churchill for Senate District 31.
I think that's 14-2, a couple of abstentions, that's fine. 14-2, I think that's carried.
14-2? Yeah, so the motion is carried, and this body votes to endorse June Churchill, Colorado Senate District 31. All right, so RTD has some service changes coming for January. First, and very excitingly, the E and H lines are back at 15-minute frequencies, which is huge. We've been waiting for that. We've showed up to so many board meetings screaming about this. I'm so glad those are back. The AB2 route is back serving 28th Avenue and Boulder, which is great. We know the AB routes do really well, and they serve a very needed community with the airport. Routes 1 and 44 are being rearranged into 3 routes, so we have this new 1E/44 service. So I think that means the east side of the 1 and the 44 are changing, but the west side is not, when I remember looking into that. We're back to 30-minute frequencies on the AB1 and the 83D, which I believe are on hourly. And we have additional trips on the Flatiron Flyer 5 and the LD1, which is great news. Plus, Route 35 has an east extension to 9 Mile, and we have some service span improvements on the 24 and 73. I think these end up running a lot later, one of them. I think the 24 is running like an extra 6 hours, so really good improvement there. All right, let's talk about the L line. So there's been some recent discussion from folks in 5 Points, particularly business owners, about the prospect of ripping up our very own L line in place of a bus solution instead on the neighboring streets, if I remember correctly. And there are some talks of that getting dedicated lanes, some BRT features. But I think what this really indicates is that the extension the L line was supposed to get to the 38th and Blake is needed now more than ever to bring relevancy to this line and get ridership up. Because yes, it is low, but I think we agree here at GDT that it could be a lot better if that project was finished. All right, so let's talk about some improvements to the Winter Park Express. So GDT, James is doing his dance. GDT met with Governor Polis about this. Was that a month ago? A couple weeks? Trying to remember.
The celebration.
We went
Yeah.
to the press
Yeah,
conference.
we went to the press conference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're getting a service expansion on this very popular line, which will bring prices down, which I think literally everyone here is excited about, myself included. So we are getting prices all the way down to $38, which is great.
And it should also be very much accentuated that our partners at Rail have been absolutely foundational in bringing back the Winter Park Express and keeping it staffed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's an awesome host program. I'm a volunteer host. They have been expanding it. I think they probably got all the candidates they need for this year. But if you are interested in becoming a host, we've got several Rail members here tonight you can speak with about getting involved with Rail as well.
Perfect.
Including my first year.
Freshman.
All right, Richard, you're taking
Oh, what have we got
Greyhound.
here? Greyhound. So, Greyhound, this is a situation where RTD has told Greyhound to pack their bags and get out of Union Station by the end of August next year.
Fitting it's named after a dog, they're gonna take it out back like old Yeller.
Okay. So, we have actually been speaking to Greyhound and with how they want to, push back. I mean, the basic issue is there's a lot of things going around. It's all been mixed up with the welcoming transit environment at Union Station. And how should I say it? There are allegations of it being quite classist as well. That some of Greyhound's passengers might not be, I don't know, carrying Louis Vuitton luggage or something. So there is a sign-on letter. It's a bit of a tactical one here because RTD has the lease. RTD can walk away and not talk, and Greyhound are the that's it. They can do that. And that's currently the plan. They're saying they're talking. What we need to do, we want to do two things here. One, we need to keep Greyhound as part of our transportation network downtown. Otherwise, we'll end up where they pick up on a gas station on the edge of town instead of being connected into our system. And then the second thing is we need to talk about the area where Greyhound serve downtown. An area that is dignified, has seats, has shelter, has bathrooms, has better facilities than the current Union Station, which, while it is a home for them, it's, when...
It was designed fundamentally for bus waits of 30 minutes or less, right? That was the design criteria, right, that the contractors executed, right? So this was never designed to be a Greyhound hub in terms of seating configuration and rider amenities.
Yep. Okay, there's a place on the website, but there is a sign-on letter coming, and we are looking for a few personal stories. If people have used Greyhound or used to use them in college, or they were something, they saved you an essential part of your life at one point. Please let us know, because we are looking to show that they are needed. This one's me. Update on the paratransit peer review. We have a big section on this last meeting. So this is what RTD came up with for the access on demand service. And remember, that was the one that's operated by Uber and Lyft, okay? They were basically saying they're going to start charging a, what do you call that, a copay?
Surcharge?
Surcharge, $4.50. They were going to halve the trip cap, up the subsidies to ride, which was a curious decision because the average access on demand fare is $16. So,
Operating cost, you mean?
Yeah.
The cost of operation is
Yeah.
$16.
Luckily, they weren't going to cut the service area or the hours on demand, and then most of the program was going to stay. So there's a few, there's some stuff on the table to change the program. That said, we wanted to roll back and go, actually, why are we doing the review? And it says, the agency wants to better understand strengths and opportunities with respect to ID complementary paratransit premium supplemental on-demand service, and note potential improvements that support long-term sustainability. Kind of it. But remember, it was an entire paratransit peer review. So let's look at what they came up with, the other half of it, which was the Accessoride, which is the main service, okay? Recertifications of some drivers, modify on-time performance, so a reporting metric modification, software mods, conditional eligibility process, contract mod, all of this is all very little thing, yeah? Remember, we told you that this is, if anybody remembers what Super Shuttle was like when you got a ride to the airport, you can't book this on the same day. You're given a half-hour pickup window where you're sitting there, thing. It can take 2 hours to do the trip. Sometimes they say you can't. I think the thing is RTD, they played it lip service. The whole thing looks like they were targeting access on demand. So, as I say, a few substantial modifications. Priority seems to be this cost reduction of the access on demand bill to go from $1 million to 0.5 million a month. But at the risk of negotiating against yourself, I think we made the point last time, is spending $1 million a month, 12 million a year to take care of 50% of our disabled RTD riders something that's good value? I would argue there's no issue here at all. Moving on. Emma. Oh,
Mike. Yep. Sorry.
All right, so Colfax BRT has broken ground, which is huge. So work started Thursday, November 14th. The initial area is between Pennsylvania and Washington, and that road is down to 1 lane each way with temporary bus stops. I think there was a communication issue with those temporary stops being handled, but hopefully that gets resolved. But yeah, this is great news.
as was mine. This is RTD's fleet transition plan. So we've had
Not pictured. Not
pre-limited.
pictured,
Yeah, I don't
This
know.
is Seattle.
I actually picked that picture to tease you because no, we're not getting trolley buses. So the final report's going to come out December the 13th, but there was a presentation on basically what they've looked at. This is the bus replacement plan for RTD. So in the grey, okay, is our diesel buses. And the exception is in the green that we own. They have 36 of the battery buses, and those are the red ones that trundle up and down the mall, okay? RTD's solution is to start, so we've got diesel, and then you've got a BEB, battery electric bus, and RTD's got a temporary solution. They're going to go out and buy lots of diesel hybrid buses, and those are the blue, okay? So we're going to have diesel in our facilities for a long while yet, okay? And they've said they're not happy with the battery technology. They don't seem to trust it. They've got apart from the 36 chargers for the chargers for the 36 more ride fleet, they got no other charging facilities. But we have a plan here where firstly, I'm kind of worried that the amount of buses they're going to have goes down. Okay.
Me first.
There's that. But if you add the grey and the blue up, that means there's going to be, if I add this in, somewhere between 700 and 800 buses still in the fleet in 2035. Okay. Absolutely no discussion of trolley wire or even what we call en route charging, which is pantographs, the ends of routes. And then we sort of looked at King County. And I'll give you an example. King County is going to be 100% emissions free by 2035. Okay, King County Metro had their last diesel hybrid buses delivered last year. They're done. No more
They've
diesel
had them
hybrids.
since the mid-2000s.
Yeah, we haven't even had the first one. Okay, and so they've already got theirs. And you notice that our actual pure play battery buses don't increase to anything until 2032. So I think this one, I don't know what the environmentalists think about this one, but I think compared to other agencies, if you're serious, this is
This is a joke.
This is a bit of a joke, I think, actually. There is... The other thing to notice as well is the state of RTD's bus barns is terrible. Like they've been neglected for 40 years. there is a chance to go straight to electric, and then you would have and completely rebuild them. And yet we're going to keep diesel for, well, way past.
Is King County going through electric or electric and trolley? Like,
They got both, yeah. Yeah, King County has trolleys.
We should be fair.
Batteries.
They've had a legacy trolley network.
They
for
got a
long
legacy,
time
yeah.
that they're building on top of.
Yeah.
So.
Have you ever been to Vancouver, BC? They've got trolley buses everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah, we are getting absolutely smoked by the enormous megalopolis of Dayton, Ohio. They got us
Did
absolutely-
Deborah tell us that she was going to look into the trolley buses and the hybrid electric buses
Well, they
in her
look
response
into
letter?
a lot of.
I know, but that's what I mean. I'm like, supposedly this
Yeah.
could be a paper
Friend
trail.
will look into it.
Yeah, we've got it on a letter actually.
We do.
I actually
Yes, we have a letter saying RTD shall.
shall and don't want to. So I mean, I want to say it
see,
might
we'll
be
see.
in the report.
Yeah.
It might be in the report. And so, I know what Chris is going to say.
You know what I'm going to say.
I know.
No, my question was what agencies are pursuing battery electric? Because you talked about King County pursuing, trolley buses, whatever, using their overhead wires. Are there any agencies that are pursuing fully electric, battery electric, that have
Yeah.
those in the, and I guess my question is, why does RTD not think those are fully baked, but, whatever the other large agency is? that is
Once
buying
bitten,
them?
twice shy. They've had some real trouble with the mall ride fleet.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. The Mulride manufacturer BYD, has overpromised and underdelivered on a number of contracts, including Albuquerque's system.
We're not unique. Philly as well has
Yep.
had a lot of problems. It's just the battery you need for a bus is just so heavy.
That said, the buses that
Utah.
that we're likely to buy, Utah, the
Yeah.
New Flyers or the Gilligs, which are the existing diesel bus suppliers,
The newest generation.
those pure play battery buses are in service all across the country now.
And they work.
Yeah, and they work, and that's so the debate of why they're still keeping diesel around for. I mean, that's committing you to diesel for what?
We got a question from Thomas
40%.
over there, by the way.
Cheaper?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thomas.
So we're gonna be adding a new bus type for the BRT, correct?
Yeah.
A variation on a type
Yeah.
we already operate, I think, is probably the nicest way. Yeah, New Flyer articulated.
So is that an opportunity for us to push for another step?
No, RTD doesn't do opportunities. We just drag ourselves forward.
No,
God,
I know.
you are fun today, aren't you?
My question is pretty simple. If we're not ready yet, why don't we keep just operating the diesel until there is an actual electric solution?
Well, that's the part that's missing from this plan, right? Is that you would expect that in the plan that goes out to 2035, right, there should have been some contingencies for what it would take to have a fleet transition plan, right? What facilities do we need to build or rebuild, right? There's, again, we're going to wait on the final report, and we should probably take it a little bit. We should probably take a step back and wait for that a little bit, but we don't see any evidence of that at all.
Well, I worked on the 16th Street Mall back in 1980. I was a contractor with KKB&A and IMK when that was built. And they originally planned it to be electric trolleys. And they went to buses because of the variability of them. They can reroute them and stuff. Where a trolley, you're kind of stuck on the rails. So.
Well, the nice thing about modern trolley buses is they still have an onboard battery.
Yeah.
So you can put the wires down and still drive
Well, I
around
know,
if
I've
there's
been
a
up to
diversion.
Vancouver.
This
Yeah,
particular,
great.
yeah.
Columbia, they've got them up there.
It's
Yeah,
real
this-
slick.
Yeah, this particular model actually, it's a New
Yeah.
Flyer XE40, and that can run a couple
So-
of miles off the wire.
So the people who are advising us on the limits of this technology say that with a battery that's 10% the size of a full battery electric bus, right, a trolley bus battery, 10% the size, you can go off wire for 50% of route miles, assuming normal conditions. So excluding hills and Phoenix-like heat and stuff like
Are
that.
they AC or DC powered?
DC.
Yeah.
DC.
DC?
Same as light rail.
You have to put in a lot of substations then.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah, but they don't have to be
Similar to
huge.
light rail.
But these are in urban areas, right? So these are places where it's not like we're, electrifying a freight train. So.
All right. Go on, real quick. Real cool.
what electric buses does Boulder run for the hop service?
Boulder has something like 2 or 3 vehicles from a manufacturer that's since gone out of business called Proterra. It seemed to be they worked, but if the manufacturers can't make it work nationally, you know,
You're out of luck.
you know, they're now sort of back to the drawing board with the existing manufacturers now. So,
I'd like to add something that I know a couple years ago in Budapest, Hungary, they replaced a bunch of their buses with battery electric buses, and it's a hilly city. Apparently battery electric buses, because of the weight, they had a really hard time going up the hills, and some of them even caught fire. So,
Hell, you think
I
that's
think
bad? Moscow got a bunch of battery buses, and they have diesel heaters on board to heat the batteries in the winter.
That's Moscow. Yeah, so I think that I agree that if RTD kept the diesel until they were ready to push for a real change to like trolley buses or a fully electric mode, I think that would actually be better for the environment than buying a bunch of new battery electric or even diesel hybrid buses that you just have to replace 30 years from now again.
Yeah, I guess my pessimism is like, will RTD ever do trolley buses? Like, will we just be like left holding the bag forever?
Yeah, the not having solutions, just kind of just moving to the next best thing, but not actually jumping all the way to the full solution.
Yeah.
That's our style.
What's the life expectancy of these?
It doesn't really matter, and the reason being is 12 years federal money, you're done. So what that stops is an agency taking money, federal money, and then flogging the asset. So, and I think it's on, is it 500,000 miles?
Like
There's
after
upper
12
limits.
years, they
So,
have
so
to
well,
get
we should give RTD credit. When you get on an RTD vehicle, it is less than 12 years old. You're not riding around on museum pieces. So, I don't know.
except for
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, we gotta roll.
Okay, so Colrail had a meeting up in Fort Collins, the main topic being Front Range Passenger Rail. GDT took a trip up on Mustang North, which was great, except that we got there late because planning is hard. And yeah, we also got to ride Transport's Max BRT, which was awesome. We had a great time in Fort Collins. Nice to see our neighbor up in the north. Our guest speaker is actually coming from Fort Collins, so maybe you could give us a tidbit on that. But yep, and then this is Keith.
So, funny thing happened. How do you make the thing go like this? Oh yeah. So, sometimes they run one-car trains, and sometimes it's not for a great reason. So, on Monday, in the worst possible place, we had a derailment. Not unheard of, but apparently it was due to a broken wheel, which really great sign. We love that. So they couldn't get the trains out of the yard, or at least the switch was down, so even if they could, they had to do a bit of funny business. Now, RTD did the right thing, which last time I'm going to say that this year, that's for sure. They broke up their consists because the operators were still there. There just weren't enough train cars.
Can you explain what a consist is?
It's a train when you have multiple cars. But as you see here, this is just stock photo. They were running one.
I took that last week.
This is not stock photo.
Stock photo.
Well, Richard
I was out there.
from Richard's extensive archives of all things trains. So they broke up the trains and were running short trains, and that is good. What's not good is the wheels should not be breaking. And not only should the wheels not be breaking, this is kind of being like a known thing. The wheel rail interface has been a lot of the problems RTD has had in the last few years. Looking around, a lot of the trains have been shorter than normal, even after they cleared this up. So we're blind men feeling up an elephant here, but we know there's something wrong, and we're not really sure what or how bad.
Yeah, I've also had situations where, like, even a few weeks ago, like, I've had 2-car trains that were packed full during rush hour. They should not have been 2 cars. So, like, there's definitely, it's not just like since Monday, there's been shorter trains than there should have been. So.
Chris?
Yeah. Did you check to see if RTV had hired Daenerys Targaryen as operator? Because I know she likes to break the wheel.
God damn, Chris.
I was out there on Monday talking to people downtown, like 16th and Stout. And I don't know if anybody's else knows. I'm talking to a few board members, like Jamie Lewis right now, putting a ticket on this, but finally, but if the real-time systems go down, or they don't, that's the last. It's like people at 16th and Stout, the H lines were canceled like multiple times, and people were getting wrong information. There were the new Lamar signs that show. The new ones, right? Was showing that it ghost training people, like it was saying people, this train can show up and it can show up. And
Real time is a joke, and
real time was down during the snowstorm.
we probably
Always
need
goes down.
it at a future meeting, like a whole section that's just like what's going on with real time.
Yeah.
Because like I've been waiting like for a D, and then an H line that's not on the schedule just shows up, and you're like, I guess I'm gonna roll with this.
And how is RT reporting those? Are they saying that they're actually putting out the information to us and saying, oh, it's all good? I'm saying, like, are they counting it as a cancellation? Cause,
Oh, they aren't saying anything.
right, 60-minute delays, that's a cancellation.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Thomas?
So a little inside information.
yeah.
Not only was there a derailment because of a wheel issue, but there was also a switch in the yard that malfunctioned.
Ooh.
Created another derailment. So we have infrastructure on both ends of things that are creating major issues.
Wait, were those two separate ones? Oh yeah, all the information we have on the
On the
outside
same
at
day.
Consolidate.
This weekend, I didn't get confirmation that it was the same day.
There was one on the D, there was a big delay on the D line on Sunday.
Well, a lot of yard is just on the
It's
D
like
line.
the wheels are coming off.
So the other tidbit is that two-thirds of the light rail fleet, which it was 201 cars originally. They've been down to less than 200 for a couple of years now. Two-thirds of them have been pulled before they will be deemed safe. So right now, well, at the time that I got this information on Monday, 74 cars were deemed safe to operate on the main line. So that is insufficient to operate a complete set, even when we're only doing 3-car consists on most of the lines, 2-car on the R line and 1 on the L line. That's approximately 40% less than what is needed just to make bare minimum.
This is what I love about GDT meetings. You just say you don't know. There's always someone who does. Well, yeah, that answers my questions. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's move.
Yep.
Let's move
This
on.
one's you.
Staying roughly on the same topic, we'll go through real quick. There's the current map. There's a little bit of orange is not bound.
We'll be dead.
Oh yes.
My grandfather would say slower than the second coming of
I
Christ.
mean, as I say, feel free. I have uploaded every map they put out, so you can figure out the pace. And I'm now thinking it's got to be in January now, and it's got to be January or February. And
I'm not counting on having 15-minute light rail service on the E line, just so you guys all know.
workable 15-minute service.
I'm not.
So
planning on
yeah,
it.
I mean the way that you can see the dates and see the maps. We've got it all uploaded at I think it's Great Denver Transit / 2024 Light Rail Crisis. Yeah, but
Would love to be wrong.
crazy.
I suppose that this is, I've heard that operators don't know a lot of the stuff, that they're not being told what to expect day by day. That's a huge problem as well.
It's a
Yeah, just
need
putting
to
out there.
know,
Yeah.
it's a need to know basis environment.
Yeah.
And operators don't need to know except when they need to be at a lottie to sign in and what their train is. The rest of it is not their need to know. We don't, they don't get any information about any of the issues on the line until they get on the main line and communicate with control.
Well, the new board is listening.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's an operations issue, and there is a humongous firewall that management will refuse to budge on between the board and management.
Yep.
So it's an eternal issue.
Yeah, thanks.
So on Tuesday, Governor Polis had a press conference where he basically laid out what I would call an aspirational set of targets for really increasing non-auto mobility in Colorado, trying to get that up from sub 10%. Transit is probably, I mean, we know in the metro Denver area it's less than 4% in terms of regular weekday trips. So a huge amount of this is it's biking and walking and stuff like that, but they want to increase that to 19.2%. So that is coupled with an 83% increase in transit service miles and a 52% increase of new housing being built near transit lines.
Including the one that was just released with over 700 parking spaces.
So here's kind of the interesting part of this, right? So there's a little graph, and I know this is really, really small for all of y'all in the back. But so here is the kind of landscape of transit agencies across the country that Governor Polis' staff looked at. Here's where we are right now.
What is the chart? We can't see.
So this is ridership. This is ridership recovery in terms of pre-pandemic versus where we are today. RTD is second from dead last of all the groups that they looked at. We don't know. I know that St. Louis is doing worse than us, and I know that Phoenix is doing worse than us. But so they didn't look at everybody, right? This is just the group of people that his staff looked at, right? So the question is that, like, so we have these targets. So the question is how. We don't really go into that. They don't talk about how we actually get there yet. However, it just so happens there happens to be this advocacy group out there that happens to be working on a ridership growth plan for RTD. We're going to be coming back to that in just a hot second.
You know, this has got international publication. I get a couple of professional magazines. I get Railway Age and Progressive Railroading. I forget what one it was in. There was an article about transit, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. And, you know, they looked at ridership levels. And so they said every transit agency in North America has come back to pre-pandemic levels or exceeded pre-pandemic levels except for RTD.
In terms of
ridership.
So that's not correct. That's not correct. Most transit agents,
possibly.
Yeah, that might be service levels. That's not ridership. Well, so right now, really,
maybe it is, but this was rail. This is just rail.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the rail.
So we'll come back to this. Another slide of mine. So beyond Denver for a second, let's take a step back. So we presented an update about a group called the Western Rail Coalition in the last meeting. Momentum is growing in the mountains for grassroots support that is focused on support from politicians, civic leaders who actually live up in the mountains. And it looks like kind of the next place of groundswell of support that we're going to get for this is actually coming out of Eagle County. So last week, what was last week? Losing track of time. Yeah, last week, Richard and I were invited by a series of Eagle County commissioners, mayors, former mayors, business owners, utility executives up to Eagle County. Basically, we had 20 people sitting at a table of basically everyone who either kind of has a key leadership role that would touch mobility, or actually we also had Core Transit there with us, leadership of Core Transit. We got unanimous support from everybody at this table that they are going to work together to push CDOT to study this operating segment on this map, to add Glenwood Springs to Leadville as an operating segment for the state resources, state professionals to study in terms of kind of broadening this mountain rail ambition. So Kathy Chandler Henry, Mayor Amy Phillips of Avon, and a series of other mountain leaders are going to be creating a delegation that's going to be coming down to Denver sometime in probably mid-December. And they are going to be looking to meet with the governor and the governor's team and basically say, we would like you to direct CDOT to study this, which is huge. Because we've got, this, we have got great rail people here in the Front Range. We've got awesome other advocacy partners across the Front Range, but getting a dedicated group of people in the mountains to raise their hands to put themselves on the map for rail is huge. So last week was a freaking groundswell of institutional support for rail.
Let's say when we met, what was the lady's name? The Core Transit.
There was a few.
So Core Transit is an agency, I think let's correct me, was approved by the voters 2 years ago.
Yes.
Brand new transit agency. It's centred around Avon, but it runs as far east as Vale, and it goes, I guess, to Eagle. And,
Yep.
and
You're thinking of Tanya Allen.
Tanya
Who's
Allen,
the-
yes.
yeah.
And you can tell that they are literally a baby transit agency. They're scrambling to get buses, train drivers, just find their footing. And she expressed an interest of, well, if you build trains, yeah, maybe we could operate them. Contrast that to somebody else, I don't know, closer to home. Okay, so, really nice to see, really sort of healthy, okay, but...
You might say they got that dog in them.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, they were very much trying to establish. Anyway.
So we'll keep things rolling. But yeah, keep your eye on Eagle County.
Ah! I cannot believe that this has given me 3 months in a row content, okay? So this month it got really good, okay? So we found out the actual meat on the story, okay? RTD terminated Dr. Joe Fitzgerald on the 20th of September. The press have been on for getting the letter, okay? And RTD decided to finally give it to him on November the 5th because there was nothing else happening that day. So it's really good. It's I've got it. It's brilliant. It's honestly, we've got it. I think we've linked to it if anyone wants to see it. He was found. They basically investigated him over the summer, and they found him in breach of RTD's rules and procedures, driving his car at 100 mile an hour plus 23 separate occasions. He said the GPS was broken. Who knows? There was the one where he lent another police officer his own car, his police car. We only found out about this because that officer managed to get the car rear-ended. And instead of and basically, if you're in an RTD vehicle, a bus or whatever, and you crash, or you're involved in a crash, you're supposed to call RTD and they come out and investigate. Apparently, the police car was driven straight home. So there's things like that. There's things like purchasing firearms on a purchase card, and the employee actually said, "I'm not quite sure if this is within the rules." And the chief basically said, "No, I can do what I like." That's actually in the letter. A number of things, and then but here's what's happened as well on November the 5th, okay, clearly because we were all otherwise against, a lawsuit was filed by Dr. Fitzgerald. Now, he said he had a lawyer last month, investigating, so they decided they were going to do a lawsuit, and the lawsuit is full of incredible sort of juicy claims, okay. It basically says that these two characters, Corey Anvil and Stephen Martinago, basically conspired. Basically said, we want, they were racially motivated. They want to get him out of the force. I mean, lots and lots of stuff. There's things about treatment of officers, differing treatments, investigations because of race. I should say at one point that it's a lawsuit. Now, in a lawsuit, you can write your version. It's he said, okay? So we're not saying the claims are true, okay? That is for a court to decide or whatever. But this stuff is out there, okay? One of the best claims, Steve Martinago, who is now being seen as painted as the racist ringleader in the lawsuit, apparently his office is full of Trump gear. So that was this guy, remember, he was co-chief. And this was a hire from Dr. Fitzgerald. The police union didn't like the co-chief, didn't like the hiring. So we basically seem to have a schism in the force, and it's now going to come to head in court. So there'll be more to this one.
Who fired him? Deborah?
Deborah fired him. She signed the letter off, yeah. Which, that's must have been difficult. I mean, I think she was left with, it seems to be she was left with no choice if you read it, but...
I'm sorry for...
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. This is my personal take. I politics are. He's the only person that's been talking about mental health professionals on RTD. He talks to me. He talks to people. He's a community police. I mean, I did not know that. I just talked to Stevie yesterday, and I did not know that this Fitzgerald guy is doing that. He also bought firearms on RTD card.
I think he told his employee to do that.
Yeah, and then, but I don't know. I think I might really plan a protest or demonstration off this because, you know, I've been assaulted on the WI in the last 2 years. I know I saw a little girl inhale. She was taken to the hospital because she inhaled fentanyl in WI last week. A little boy. And this guy was living in Colorado Springs, not checking in at all. Now he's trying to take our resources. Like, this is the last thing. It's affecting morale of everybody. All the security officers say they don't care. Oh, RT doesn't care about us, blah, blah, blah. But Steve Margano is respected among, and I don't know if he's going to run for cut chief, but he's been deputy chief for a long time. That's crazy that he's saying that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's.
And you saw someone under the bus, or I guess car.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah, we gotta roll because we're gonna run out of time if we don't.
Real
so.
quick, social media, just a reminder, we're obviously on X, but I've heard that some people aren't into that much anymore. So you have some alternatives. There's good old Book of Face, Instagram, Facebook's copy of X, Threads, another copy of X, it's called Blue Sky. I think that's the fashionable one now, isn't it? Cool kids on that one now? This week? Yeah, there's something like that. And then YouTube, and YouTube, we're live on YouTube right now. Okay, so if
Thanks to Ian and Coleman over there. Hey guys.
So while I'd like you all to subscribe and like and follow all of these, if you really could go on the YouTube channel and subscribe, that would really help us because YouTube, I think, starts giving us more privileges after a certain amount of subscribers.
Okay, yeah. So for those of you who are members, this is not for guests and first timers. If you're a member and you had some pizza tonight, if you would be so kind as to Venmo $3 to this Venmo code. Like we said, we do not have any permanent funding source. This came out of my paycheck. So anyway, we're happy to do it. But yeah, as long as we are a grassroots group, this is how we fund all of our advocacy. It's people, it's time, and it's our own resources. So appreciate that.
Cool. Okay, so monthly meetings. 6 p.m. on third Thursday of the month. We have transit-oriented drinks after. And our next meeting is going to be in January. We're not doing one for December. That is Thursday, January 23rd. Federal Boulevard BRT Walk and Roll. That is going to be 12 p.m. Saturday, November 30th. Our own Thomas Tapero has some pamphlets for that, I believe.
Flyers if you want the details. It's also been posted on the Slack for DBL, Denver Bicycle Lobby, ours, YIMBY, and
Strong Towns.
Strongtown is the one that's hosting it. So if anybody has needs a flyer, come see me, or if they have any questions, I'm happy to share.
Cool. All right, Keith.
So,
Just
pertinent,
re-elected board members want to.
December 3rd, last board meeting of the year and last board meeting for this 2-year session of the board. Let's see, do we have all of them? Yeah. Pull up. Basically, I mean, like, there's a lot of things we could complain about. A lot of the outgoing people are not going to be taking on any new projects. You've all been through school and been there on the last day before break. But in a lot of ways to say thank you and just to set the tone for what we're going to be going into next January. Also, fun thing here, if you love to yap, and I do. I don't know if you could tell. You get to double public comment. One regular, general, and the other because it's budget season. So talk for 3 minutes on whatever you want, and then if you have comments on the budget, and there are some real stinkers in there, feel free to talk about that as well. It'll be a grand old time if this is what you're into, which you should be. I expect to see all of you there. Yeah, who's that?
Go on in.
So, as some of you probably already know, I am turning 40 in less than a month, and rather than just do a big party at which everybody can get together and drink and I can feel special, old about myself, I figured, as James was just saying, this group runs on a shoestring budget, so let's give them some money. So I'm hosting a big party in a nice room at the Spire downtown on the 13th as a fundraiser for GDT. And I encourage literally all of you to come. There will be lots of food, drinks, etc., etc. It's going to be fantastic. And then you can make a donation when you register at the link that you see right there, or scan the QR code, birthday.christopherrtd.com, or when you get to the event, there will be a big thing in which you can throw money. So yeah, I want to send GDT into the next year when I will be on the board, when he will be on the board, when he will be on the board, with the next level of resources and opportunity so that you guys can be there for us. And that means that, they need cash to be able to do the next set of things that we all need to do. So please come to my party.
This is also yours.
So, I like meetings. Another board meeting, different agency this time, December 13th, FRPR. This one you really got to show up for and tell them basic things, because a lot of the people on there don't know anything about anything. We love them, but we are really trying, again, for the last 2 years, been pushing for more service. At the meeting up in Fort Collins, it seems like, okay, they are moving forward, but man, they will die on that 6 train a day hill.
Where is this meeting?
Online, you can do it in your pajamas.
Yeah.
Good, because it's at 9 a.m.
True.
Look, I'm not gonna wake up at 5:30 a.m. for this. Sorry. So yeah, pull up, give comment. It's not quite as fun as an RTD board meeting, but it's still important. This one's for you, Emma.
Okay, right along. So we have one tonight at Federal Bar and Grill. We were hoping to catch the 28th. That seems less and less likely. We'll probably take an alternative. But yeah, our guest speaker, not to give things away, but our guest speaker is going to talk on Federal BRT, so it seemed fitting to do a transit ride along to Federal. All right, Project Champions. We need your help with these. There's still some open positions. Richard, do you know which positions we still have? The L line extension, I
Line
think.
extension, Colorado, I think.
Could take on Colorado.
There you
Yeah, I
go.
think we talked about
All right,
that.
we will talk to you about
What else is open?
that.
I've got Federal. Rach has Colfax.
Yep.
What does that leave?
I don't
38.
38th.
yeah.
Yeah, 38th is open. But yeah, if you're interested.
What do you mean Project Champions? What are people volunteering for?
Oh, so
Eyes
project,
and ears.
yeah.
You attend meetings. You update us on new news releases related to that line. You stay in contact on that line with the people working on it. And basically you report back to us if there's been any changes to the plan, so that we're still in the loop. So you get on all the meeting calendars for those, and basically you stay in contact with GDT leadership.
All right, we can fly through this in the interest of time. We do not have new data this month. The board meeting being in early December means they have not published the board packet, so the ridership data we have is still from August. Right at that time, we have a difficult comp year over year with zero fare the previous summer, but I mean, there's no concealing that light rail is struggling, and we expect that in September it will continue to be struggling. Operator shortage, we continue to have kind of a murky picture with data on light rail operators, right? Depending on what sources you use, if you use the headcount versus if you use the net hiring versus departures. still telling different stories. However, right, we continue to see really big progress with staffing up for bus ops. So really, hopefully, I think a lot of us are very optimistic that the bus picture and service improvements next year will be meaningful on the bus side. So something to be optimistic about. But next, I think it's time for us to introduce our guest speaker for the evening.
Yeah, we have Ryan Knowles, the project manager for Federal BRT and Colorado BRT, I believe, for CDOT.
That is right. So talking to this.
All right, let's give Ryan a warm welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for the zoom in on my head.
You're welcome.
Okay, so tonight I'm going to talk about Federal Boulevard BRT, kind of give you an update on where we are with the project, talk about some of the design details and service details, and we can field any questions you have, but I'll just jump right into it. So, good question to start with. Why is CDOT involved in BRT? So, traditionally, if you look at transit agencies across the country, they usually take the lead on BRT projects. However, our administration at the state of Colorado, particularly our director at CDOT, is very interested in improving multimodal options. And we've been directed by the state legislature as well as our Transportation Commission to address our greenhouse gas emission issue in this region. And so those two things together really inform our approach to thinking about urban arterials, so high volume arterials that run through our cities, particularly Federal Boulevard and Colorado Boulevard. And with the movement toward BRT in the region as a whole, so Colfax moving forward, the BRT feasibility study that was completed several years ago, I think the time is ripe really to start beginning to build out this network of BRTs in the Denver metro region and connect it to the other transit services that CDOT is advancing and DOTI is advancing and RTD is working on as well. Particularly the passenger rail that you've all been talking about. So as that comes online, we really expect that there will be a system, a transportation network that people can use to get into and out of Denver, and then also get around Denver and within Denver and the inner ring and outer ring suburbs. And so we're really trying to envision a future where you can get around the busiest places in Colorado without a car. So as you're well aware, Federal Boulevard is one of RTD's highest routes. I think I heard earlier number 3. I had been saying number 2, so that is a good correction that I got. The corridor experiences a lot of delay and a lot of congestion, particularly for the buses, and I'll get into that in a moment. That feasibility study that RTD did several years ago really did show a high propensity for ridership growth and for federal support. And so we have really taken that work that was done several years ago, as well as the alternatives analysis that Denver completed in 2022, and the Federal Boulevard Multimodal Transportation Study that the cities of Westminster, Federal Heights, and Adams County did, and picked up that work and ran with it. And so a lot of the design that we have developed has been based off of those previous planning studies. And we have submitted a rating application for a small starts grant. We did that in August, late August of this year. And I think we're now done collaborating with the FTA on all of the particulars of that application. So we expect good rating through that. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because I think everyone here knows what BRT is. The question we often get is, will CDOT build real BRT? And yes, we are planning on building real BRT with platforms as well as signature stations, smaller than the ones that are going to be in place on Colfax, but still much nicer than a typical RTD shelter. We'll have TVMs as well as real-time information at the stations. And then the vehicle will also be the same vehicle that will be operating on Colfax. So where we are with the overall recommended alternative, so we've really done a lot of work around analyzing boardings and trip lengths on Federal Boulevard and also looked at a lot of the development that is coming online or is proposed in the next several years, as well as really looking at densities and a lot of demographic information regarding who is using transit, who is likely to use transit or needing it. We took the 73 stop pairs on the corridor between 120th and Dartmouth and consolidated those into 38 station pairs. So the distribution of those on average from 120th to Dartmouth is about a half mile between stations. However, you'll see in Denver, it's a little closer than it is in Westminster for obvious reasons. Just the land use densities and the population densities are much higher in Denver than they are in Westminster, particularly the closer you get to 120th, far up north. We developed 2 service plans, so really looking at the number 30, the number 31, the routes down south, hoping to really combine and consolidate the service so that it is easier to access. So there are 2 lines that we are proposing. One runs between the Wagon Road Park and Ride, just east of I-25. It goes down 120th, turns onto Federal, and continues to the Evans Transfer Center. And then the second line, that would be the BRT North line. The BRT South line extends between the Westminster station and the Englewood light rail station. So it'll continue down Federal Boulevard from about 70th Avenue and then turn on to Dartmouth, and the terminus will be at the Englewood station. So those 2 lines each run at a 15-minute frequency. In the overlap between Westminster and Evans Transfer Center, you'll have a staggered service pattern where there will be a BRT bus arriving every 7.5 minutes. And the reason we took that approach was in our analysis, we found that most people who are making trips on Federal Boulevard are typically traveling 3 to 5-ish miles. And so the highest number of trips are really occurring in that core area. And so that is the most important part that we see in providing additional service. The travelway, so the roadway, will include 13 miles of bus lanes, so 26 if you count both directions. The bus lanes are side running, so they will allow right turns into and out of driveways, and they will share right turns at intersections. However, we are going to be, through our design process, trying to clean up the driveway situation on Federal Boulevard because there are a ton of driveways. Hopefully reducing the amount of conflicts that would exist there. And then we are proposing mixed traffic operation south of Evans Avenue to Dartmouth. So in that section, there is lower traffic volumes and also just not a lot of bus delay today. And then between 20th and 50th, where there is a significant amount of delay, and I'll go into that in a minute. And so we have actually looked at where the bus is most delayed within that section of the corridor and are proposing targeted queue jumps and bus lanes to help alleviate that congestion and that delay. So on the topic of delay, you can see how it is distributed over the course of the entire project area. So the most delayed section of the entire project where the bus is most caught up in traffic is between Evans and Alameda. So that's roughly almost a quarter. And then Alameda to Colfax also is high. So really the Colfax South Federal section sees a lot of the delay that is experienced by the bus in the corridor today. And then as I mentioned, 20th to 50th also has a pretty significant amount. And so that's really why we are proposing those bypass lanes that I mentioned. And this map just kind of gives you an overview of how that all plays out. So basically the blue is where we are repurposing or adding bus lanes. The yellow is where we have the mixed traffic operation with bypass, queue jumps, and TSP will be in the entire corridor. So at every signalized intersection, we'll have transit signal priority. And then the orange is where we're repurposing law and right turn lanes and existing shoulders to have bus lanes. And so this can just give you kind of a visual of what this might look like. We haven't yet designed what the shelters look like, and we're talking about adding landscaping and other amenities in the station areas, but this is kind of just a first cut at showing how the existing right-of-way will change based on the proposal that we have today. So this is at Federal Boulevard and Mississippi Avenue. You could see that northbound bus lane is shown in this section, and then the side-running bus stop there, bus station. This is at Tennessee and Federal. I think this is the Sanderson Gulch, where there is an existing hawk, but you can see the sidewalks are just not in great condition, and so part of this is also focused on improving the pedestrian infrastructure connecting to the BRT, so all that is built into the project. And this is kind of zoomed out, but I can point out a few things here. This is the Federal and Decatur station area, or the Federal and 14th intersection. So today, this is one of the worst crash locations in the entire corridor, and we are working closely with DOTI to implement Vision Zero solutions with them in the project and before the project. But one thing that we are very seriously looking at is realigning the, is there a pointer on here? It's not going to work on the screen, never mind. So realigning the ramps to Colfax east and westbound. Today they are very freeway-like and kind of contribute to this Wild West condition where people just kind of swerve in and out. And it also is pretty bad considering that the bus transfer at Decatur and Federal is just south of there. So cleaning up the ramps eastbound and westbound on Colfax, the adding a ADA accessible ramp to the stairs leading from the bus station to the light rail platform. It's hard to tell in this picture, but today there are 3 through lanes and then a right turn lane and a left turn lane. So just on the northbound side of the street, there are 5 lanes, and then on the southbound side of the street, there are 3 lanes. So where we're building the bus station, we're actually going to take one of those lanes and turn it into a bus rapid transit, a BRT bus lane, and then carve out a pedestrian median in the middle so that folks who are crossing that south leg of the intersection, if they don't make it in time, they'll have a place to stop. But we are also looking at signalized improvements, including protected left turns, as well as lengthened crossing times for pedestrians. So the goals of the project, kind of building on what I've just highlighted, you know, we really are focused on safety. We're working with Denver and our traffic engineers and professionals at CDOT, as well as with staff north in Westminster, Federal Heights, and Adams County to improve safety for all roadway users. So not just on the roadway, but then also at station areas. We hear very regularly from people in doing our engagement that they want to feel safe at the bus stations when they're built. And so the bus stations will include emergency call boxes, better lighting. You know, we're really thinking about sight lines in the design so that if you're waiting in one of these stations at night, you can see if someone's coming down the sidewalk. We are very focused on improving speed and reliability. That is kind of our North Star with trying to determine where best to put different of the components in the project, and I can talk more about that. When we have done our service planning and really looked at the travel times in the corridor, we have worked hard to get it as competitive with driving as possible, and I think it is pretty close to the amount of time it would take to drive north to south on the corridor to take the bus. So that is a pretty big improvement from what's there today. Also, just increasing those frequencies. Today, north of Westminster Station, there's 1 bus an hour. That's going to go to 4, which is a big improvement. And then certainly between Westminster and Colfax, there will be additional service there. Yep, sorry. How much did you hear there? Okay, so we're, sorry, just really focused on improving service frequencies. So from what exists today, the service plan we developed will provide a lot more transit service. It's built on the system optimization plan, but it's about a 7% increase in service hours above and beyond that. So I think and correct me if I'm wrong, today there's about 65,000 service hours on Federal Boulevard. The SOP takes it about to 98,000, and then the BRT will take it up to 107. So it's an increase on what's already budgeted and planned, and we've worked with RTD to fund that and, make sure that when the BRT opens, that level of service will be provided. Additionally, with the station design, we are going to be working with local neighborhoods and community groups to help reflect the local context in the station design. So it's a long 18-mile corridor. There are a lot of different types of neighborhoods and communities, and we want to make sure that we're highlighting and celebrating those, and also fitting the stations will have a common architecture, but I think there's a lot of room to customize that architecture in the station areas to really reflect the communities around each individual station. And then finally, we're building accessibility into the project. We've, in our station design, really focused on ease of access to the stations. We've had to move a few, frankly, because of the cross slopes and, concerns about people who may have trouble with their mobility or are in wheelchairs getting up the hill to the station in time. So things like that we are working actively on. And then we are also doing a first and last mile study separate from the full BRT project. It's being led through our headquarters. But that's really looking at potential services and small infrastructure projects that could be delivered when the BRT opens. And the goal would be to better connect people to the stations so that they can access the BRT line when it is operational. So overall, in that safety, we're looking at improving 40 or more intersections with crosswalk enhancements. As I mentioned, the stations will have lighting and cameras and emergency call boxes. In the roadway design, rather, we are really thinking about how we're going to lower vehicle speeds. Speeding is a huge problem on Federal Boulevard, and so we're looking at lane widths. We're looking at other design elements that could potentially help with that. We're working with Dottie, who has been doing some initial speed management work on the corridor, and so we'll be building that into some of the project as well. As I mentioned, sidewalks are a big component of the project. Right now, the design has 6 miles of new or improved sidewalks. We're also designing other stretches of sidewalk to be delivered with the project. And then overall, 36 more trips on Federal Boulevard than exist today. As I mentioned before, 26 new miles of bus lane that don't exist. We expect the travel times to be 15% or more better than they are today, and then the 38 station areas. And then overall, our initial modeling and traffic analysis has indicated that we'll be able to actually increase people throughput, so carry 15% more people on the corridor, and most of that is on the transit side. So expecting a very large increase in the amount of transit capacity that is on Federal Boulevard. And really the goal is to rebalance Federal so that transit is a primary mode on the corridor. And then, as I mentioned, we have a very large mandate to address greenhouse gas emissions. So with this, we expect to reduce vehicle miles traveled by 3.5 million miles a year. And then, as I mentioned, really trying to contextualize the project as much as possible for the diversity that exists on Federal Boulevard. We've been doing a lot of engagement. So we've been doing pop-ups where we've been going to coffee shops, recreation centers, libraries. We've had 21 of those events so far since we started in the spring. We've also gone to a bunch of festivals. We've been to 20 different events. We were at the Westy Fest in Westminster, the Highlands Art Festival, the Dragon Boat Festival, the Far East Center's Autumn Festival, just for example. We've been doing meetings with groups like RNOs, BIDS, of course, your group. We had a community roundtable on Tuesday night with Denver Streets Partnership and Pedestrian Dignity. So Overall, our approach has really been to do everything possible to get out and talk to people about this project. We've also had more traditional open houses. We had 3 of those in May. We'll have more next year. I think we're going to do an online open house and town hall in the winter of 2025, so in the next 2 or 3 months. Approximately, we've engaged, I think we have a running count, it's an estimate, but roughly around 2,700 people. We have a list of ongoing comments that we've collected, so 256 comments that have been submitted through all of these different methods of engagement. But I would say, we just have a lot of conversations with people, which is most important. Just talking to people and answering questions that they have, I think, is more important than counting numbers. So, we're happy to be here, happy to come back at some future point if you have more questions about the project. So that's always something that we're wanting to do. And then in this phase of the project right now, we're working on our NEPA review as well as building towards our 30% design. The next phase of the project really will be finishing the final design process and preparing to go to construction, which we expect will happen in mid-2027. And our goal is to have this open for the public by 2030, but hopefully before. And with that, I can take any questions you have.
Okay, so we are very short on time, so I'm going to keep this brief. But Keith?
Well, I know you've gotten a lot of heat from it in the past, so I'm going to ask you, as a transit rider, rather than as a CDOT employee, about the 30-block-long elephant in the room, which is not having dedicated lanes between 20th and 50th. And I know when you're at like an official thing, you have to toe the party line, but let me just ask you as an advocate, who do we, as advocates, need to yap at to maybe get a few extra miles of lanes?
I would say everyone who would need to hear that has heard it. So our director, transportation commissioners, council people. We have been taking that feedback very seriously. And I do have a position as a CDOT employee. I will say that the bypass lanes that we've identified, which are at Spear and 38th, when we did our analysis, we found that is where the bus gets most delayed, and that if we have those bypass lanes there, it really does reduce the amount of congestion. And so that's like an analysis, right? The other night I was traveling on Federal Boulevard, and my experience was that, I was stuck in traffic for a while, and it was mostly south of Spear. And then there was a spot between Spear and I'd say probably 35th where it was bad. And then after that, it kind of opened up. So I think that, the analysis is sound. I understand the perspective that it's important to have a space for the bus because, so long transit's been deprioritized in our overall system. So it's a hard thing to balance because on one hand, if we could get bus lanes in there, they would be much better than bypass lanes and queue jumps. But the trade-offs that we think could happen with that approach, it's primarily traffic diversion into neighborhoods and on neighborhood streets. We think that'll be pretty bad. And so I think our overall approach is let's do this thing that we think will be a big improvement, see if it works. And then also let's come back in the first year or two of opening the BRT. And if we're off on the mode shift, if we see it be widely successful, then maybe it does then make sense to stripe a fully continuous lane between 20th and 50th, and that traffic diversion will materialize the way we think it will.
So to be very clear, there's nothing concrete, I mean that not metaphorically, literally concrete, that would prevent just restriping those lanes as like a Doty project.
Yeah, I mean, it's a CDOT street, so it has
Yeah.
to be approved by CDOT. But
But-
I will say, like, everything about the BRT, other than that, fully continuous bus lane, will be in place. And that's kind of the great thing about side running BRT is, the stations will be where they need to be. The technology will already be in the signals. And so then it's just a matter of operationally what are the lane assignments.
Okay, we probably got time for one more question. Yeah, Lucia, did you want to go?
So he pretty much asked my other question. So, you say it's real BRT, but if it's mixed in traffic, it's not BRT. I live along Broadway, and cars are always getting into the bus lane. We just rode our bus here in downtown, and the bus driver's honking because people are getting in the bus lane. I wish we had a laser zapper and we could just get rid of them right to the crusher. Anyway, so I don't understand the side running, because then you do have all these driveway issues, and you do just have paint and people turning in to turn right. And why is this not a center running one like Colfax?
So, as I mentioned earlier, we did so Denver did a very thorough analysis determining what the trade-offs would be between center running and side running. Ultimately, they recommended the side running, and the reason they did that was the travel time, and correct me if I'm wrong, the travel time benefits between center running and side running were not vast. They were not vastly different, but the cost of implementing center running versus side running is. So particularly in that section between 20th and 50th, the right-of-way impacts would have been huge. Those medians with the trees would be ripped out and rebuilt, but just a lot of impact, and a lot of change to Federal Boulevard, and for the good. But that section has a lot of houses that front Federal Boulevard. A lot of those front yards would have been impacted, and I think when the decision was made to go with the side running alternative, that just wasn't something that people felt was possible.
All right, round of applause for Ryan Knowles of CDOT.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. So we're coming back to a project that got started almost 2 years ago now. That started as just a downtown project, and as we've gotten feedback from other kind of community members, other coalition members, and members of GDT, we have basically taken a crack at the SOP itself, right? RRTD has put together a plan for the future of buses that we have found gravely insufficient. So part of what we've been doing as an organization, right, is that as we have looked at RTD's network, right, taking a kind of zoomed out perspective of regional connectivity, right, what would it actually take to change the math and make transit radically competitive in terms of convenience, with resources that are in scope within a Tabor state? So tonight we're going to present a quick update, a very, very condensed update of an enormous amount of work that people in this group have been doing. Keith here, Joe, Cody, right? We've got several folks who spent an enormous amount of time trying to kind of blue sky think this, but deliberately grounding it in making sure that we are being thoughtful about where resources will come from, what resources we have today, and how we can stretch dollars, right, to get way more out of the buses that we are already operating. So with that premise, just wanted to kind of review for some of the folks who are kind of newer to GDT. This is how the project started. We were looking at downtown by itself and just observing that we have an enormous amount of buses already here. We've got a ton of buses, more than any other part of Colorado, operate in these kind of 20 square blocks of Central Business District and Lodo, Denver. So what would happen if we made the operation of these buses, the operating patterns of these buses, radically consistent, making it really easy to understand, where people don't need to memorize anymore what bus number that they need to take to cross Denver. They just need to know where the northbound buses go, where the southbound buses go, where the east buses and the westbound buses go, broadly speaking. Kind of creating what kind of adapting what Portland and Minneapolis have done over the last last decade and a half or so, right, of really rethinking their buses that they already have, right? The idea is these are operators that are already running buses. These are buses that are already running. How can we make them work really, really well? So, for those of you who have met Ted Rosenbaum, he unfortunately is not able to be with us tonight. He just had, his wife had another baby very recently, so he is very, very busy.
The audacity.
The audacity. However, so what we try to do is, right now, RT doesn't really have a static map of downtown. For a couple of you who've seen this before, I mean, this is a mess. I mean, for how few blocks we are talking about and how really kind of Civic Center and Union Station are the two hubs of the RTD network. They're barely a mile apart. And yet there's absolutely no reason or rhyme to understand how the heck you cross downtown efficiently. What is the fastest bus? Can anyone here tell me what is the fastest way to get from Civic Center to Union Station when the Metro ride is not running?
Walk.
Yeah, it is. It is. That is correct. That is actually correct. So what is the fastest bus? No.
0?
So it depends on which direction you're going. Southbound, the 0 is the fastest. But yeah, if you are not coming all the way from Civic Center, the 20, that is the right answer. The 20 is the fastest way to get from Central Business District to Union Station. But it doesn't technically go to Civic Center, so half points. Sorry. Sorry. We gotta keep the transit people on the toes. We've been talking shit on RTD all night. We gotta hold ourselves accountable a little bit too. So what if we made this really, really easy to understand? What if we applied the principles of kind of Seattle's approach to BRT, which is not true BRT, rapid ride? What if we kind of applied these radial trunks in downtown where we were to consolidate service? That's hot. Come on. That is just hot. It is incredibly easy, right? The idea is that we have 17th Street as continuing to do what it does today, which is feed all the buses that are southbound for these community routes and some of the regional routes on South Broadway, right? But really simplify and eliminate the zigzags, which, as transit planners know, right? When you expose buses to, especially left turns during traffic of peak commute times, that's really where you get buses really struggling to turn, especially if you don't have the dedicated turn left lane. And then also right turns, if it's like a heavy arterial you're trying to get over on, forget about it. You're going to be waiting sometimes 2 blocks of traffic, as we already do already today in between kind of the Union Station area and Blake, right? We desperately need some more traffic protection there. But really, the huge benefits of this, right, is that without enormous amounts of capital investment, we already have buses that are operating today. Well, let's put together a demo of what happens when buses work really, really well. Let's apply the lessons learned of what our cities have been doing, our peer cities like Seattle, Portland, even Houston being 15 years ahead of us, in terms of their bus reconfiguration for the... I just came back from Texas, so... But anyway, this is really kind of... This started a broader conversation where I think a few of us who've gotten involved in the more kind of recent period since this map has been launched, right, is that we've got we've kind of crowdsourced ideas.
Richard wouldn't let me put it in the slide, but y'all ever heard of scope creep? Welcome.
Scope creep. So basically this became, let's rethink, not just downtown, let's rethink the SOP. So just as a refresher of kind of what we just talked about, right, we're consolidating new services, we're trying to optimize what buses operate where, and we talked about a problem earlier tonight with Greyhound. Right, where Greyhound will sit in the future, right? One of the things that we've worked on is how can we actually really efficiently, depending on whether it's a local bus, whether it's a regional bus, whether it is an express bus, right? How can we make these operations really, really simple and deliver the quality of service, right, for people who are looking for a community route to get from your neighborhood to a transit hub and get on something fast, right? How you can efficiently connect someone from a neighborhood to a transit hub, right, where they can make a regional journey really effectively. Union Station right now is it. Union Station is the regional hub that we have, but Civic Center could be so much greater. So really quick, just to blast through this, you guys have seen this, our idea for how to make the Metro ride great again. Let's actually give it something useful to do. Let's do something different.
Can you go back real quick?
We're going to do caps, won't we?
Where is that going? We can't see. Where is that going?
So basically, so the Blake and Market trunk idea is that right now we do not have a bus connecting Ballpark and Rhino. There's no way to get by bus from Ballpark to Rhino without a long, long walk. Right, so what we're saying is that what if we consolidated a bunch of buses that kind of approach downtown from these kind of edges, these diagonal edges, right, but let's actually create a really high frequency bus zone to cross downtown, and let's leverage a resource that got Fast Tracks funding to connect two of the highest ridership Fast Tracks hubs. Right, let's actually deliver on the intent of what the Metro Ride was supposed to do, which was how can we make sure that Central Downtown, right, which lost its hub, not Central Downtown, how Market Street, which lost its historic bus hub with Fast Tracks, can remain connected to the new Fast Tracks lines that were brought into service in the 2010s. So, you guys, most of you who are GDT members have seen this before. In the interest of time, I'm just going to blast through a few of these other things. Yes, we have to rebalance bus hubs, bus gates at Union Station. We've got this issue with Greyhound not being adapted, right, where we have seating and these really uncomfortable metal benches, right, that were only really designed for 30-minute waits or less. Bada bing, bada boom, right? We can fit radically more buses operating out of Union Station and into Union Station with thoughtful spacing of gate assignments. Really nerdy stuff. If you're interested in this, we can talk after. But part of this too is making sure that Civic Center, right, that's kind of our other bus hub that we already have, reaches its potential, right, and being kind of the southern anchor of downtown. So for those of you who are interested in this, we can talk about it afterwards, but I would like to hand, really quick, one more really important piece of funding that we have is Fast Tracks, right? Fast Tracks provided funding for a tranche of buses, right? These buses are called the Flatiron Flyer. They serve technically already more than just Boulder, right? They serve other communities. So one of the things is that there's a bus driver who's also a member of Greenfield City Council who drives the Flatiron Flyer and has spent several years driving this and has kind of really developed a sense of how can we stretch this funding to make sure that more communities are actually served. Communities like Erie, right, where we can actually deploy Fast Tracks funding that doesn't need to come out of the RTD budget. Right? So it's kind of approaching how we can creatively fund these things to get real service improvements soon. But now I'd like to turn this over to some of the folks who are expanding this to be not just a downtown project.
There's that, and the clicker.
Emma?
Okay, first of all, Emma, I'm sorry. It was a complete joke to think we'd make anything by 8:30. We'll be lucky to get out of here by 9. If you need to leave early, you can, but we got a lot. What you are about to see is the Cliff Notes version of the abridged version of the concise version of a really big project. Make sure everyone can see this. Sure. So, this is the SOP, the Service Optimization Plan. You know, because it has optimize in the name, it's a glorified service cut. It does a bunch of stuff. A lot of it's not good. There are some good ideas in there, and you'll see themes similar to that. But we have... There we go. This is just what we could get on the map in the last few days before this. Every route from Parker to Longmont is at some point getting looked at, and a lot more have been.
Can you stand back further?
Sure. I'll keep bobbing back and forth so everyone can see. So, we think, because we're arrogant little bastards, but we're right, that we can do better. So, well, first, I'd like Joe to talk a little about, I'll give you this, because you're the data guy. Talk about how did we arrive at these squiggles.
So this probably doesn't look that different to anybody compared to what we have today. And that's for good reason. We didn't set out to nuke the whole system and start over as much as we'd like to. We don't have time to do that yet. So what we've been doing is kind of going through the SOP route by route and looking for what's the low-hanging fruit, what are the things we can do with the least amount of additional resources that RTD needs to go find. And a lot of that is based on who uses the system right now, how has it transformed from 2019 to today, and where we started with this, and it's not shown here. But we scaled, all these blue dots are stops on the system. All the yellow lines are the existing routes. And then the colored lines are the ones we've modified, updated. We scaled all the stop dots to be different sizes based on the average daily boardings.
It would look a little
Per
busy
stop.
if we had this here, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And use that as our primary tool to see like where are the travel patterns, where are people going, what are the popular transfers, what are the stops that aren't being used, and there's bus routes with just huge lines of stops that nobody's using. Can we find a more useful route for that? A lot of that has turned into straightening routes out a little bit. There's places where routes kind of meander into neighborhoods, ideally to serve that neighborhood, and then 2 people get on per day, but you're adding 5 minutes to that bus route. So we're looking for those opportunities. We're looking for where are we really close to an important transfer, but not quite there, where we can move the line another half mile, another mile, and hit a big trip generator, hit a big transfer point. So we're looking for these low-hanging fruit. What can we do without a huge need for new resources? And that's how we've gotten here so far.
Yeah. We'll probably have to take questions at the end. We got a lot of slides. I think we've managed to get it down to like less than 50. Yeah, I know, James. We have some guiding principles and philosophies, but they will be illustrated as we go through this, as well as how we do resources. So first off, these are buses that the only change is the downtown trunks. Once they get outside of downtown, they remain the same. And that's quite a lot. 0, 1, 7, 10. It's a lot. And they used to have their own slides. And then we realized that would be dumb because you've already seen the trunks. It adds about 12 minutes. Some of these, it requires a few more operator hours. That's our main measure of resources, is how many extra operators an hour do you need to maintain the service, which you can have a service run longer but still not require more operators if there is enough extra room in the cycle time to fit that in with the existing operators. So like all of these might require more time, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will require more operators. So on average, it takes 12 minutes, which often, as you can see, fits. But we want to include an example. So this is the 1. You'd see similar things for the 7, for the 48. You have the regular route, and then when it gets into downtown, it takes the trunk rather than doing whoop-de-doos. Next, minor adjustments. More of these will grow, but these are just little tweaks that are good value for money. I'm going to pass it to Cody because this was his little stroke of genius because it allowed us to eliminate an entire bus. This is the 20 killer.
Yeah, one thing I noticed when looking at 17 was it passed by,
You might need that.
by
Thank you.
an important employment center, which is Enro. But it doesn't go there. And this is a 15-minute, during the peak times, this is a 15-minute frequency bus, which is really good for West Side. With just a very minor, I think we've got, less than 3 minutes. All it has to do is take a detour down one little street. There's already a bus stop there for the GS, which goes there. And it's one of the highest ridership locations for that line. And fortunately, in that area, there's also a roundabout, so it doesn't, the geometry is really easy for the bus to get down there.
No left turns.
Yeah, no left turns. And then it's a very easy, just minor adjustment to the route that would otherwise, they just kind of misses. And
I'm gonna pass you this.
Joe's
For anyone that
battle
doesn't
this,
know,
yeah.
the 19 goes right by Pecos Junction Station. You can watch it drive by as you get off the train. It does not stop at the station. It has no connection to the B and G line. If you want to get between the 19 and the B or the G, you have to walk to the I-76 on-ramp and wait for the bus there with no good pedestrian infrastructure. So another low-hanging fruit. We're going by a really good transfer point. Let's take the bus in there. Adams County just built a traffic signal here, which was the main barrier to RTD running this service. They didn't want to make an unprotected left turn. That should no longer be a problem. If we really want to speed it up, I want to investigate what if we just drop elevators and stairs down from the Pecos Bridge towards the train platform, similar to at Bellevue Station. Then we don't have to add any time to the bus.
my idea for a zip line was killed pretty early in that discussion.
But we're looking for opportunities
Yeah.
like that all over the network. If you know of any, let us know.
And one area we've also looked at is splitting routes, just to make it,
Increase
It-
reliability.
increase
You don't have
reliability.
delays across a
And-
14-mile.
this adds no resources, so like, you don't have to have additional drivers in order to maintain that reliability and
The
frequency.
SOP has a lot lot of this, and
Yeah, this is actually,
we
yeah.
agree with most of them. In fact, we've actually added some more, like the 35. It prevents compounding delays, but one problem with the SOP is they love their letter suffixes. Can't get enough of them. We have said, no, we're adults here. We're giving them their own numbers. And thankfully, there's a lot of free ones. 23 was free. 22, free. 14, getting axed. We'll just take that, thank you very much. 27, yoink. 13, no 13. Thank you kindly. So yeah, if a bus does not overlap with another bus, there's no reason for them to share a number.
Yeah, and you can see this is an example of where, this is actually in the SO, we just kind of gave it different numbers. But
With one minor improvement of
Two minor improvements.
Yeah.
But
the
we don't have to get into
doohickey.
both of them.
yeah,
This is just so funny. It's become an inside joke amongst the 5 of the people doing this. It goes into a golf subdivision where we think like an RTD director lived in like the 80s, and it stops at every parking lot in there. It's wild.
Every building.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Windsor Gardens.
Oh.
And only in one direction,
Yeah.
so it doesn't even fully serve the place.
It only goes in one, I didn't know.
Yeah.
all right.
The other really minor change is we just made a little bit safer connections to the zero bus running on Broadway to make sure people didn't have to cross
Thank you.
the
Thank
streets to make that connection.
There's loads of little
you.
things like
Yeah.
I'm with Surfwest, we're working with Holly on that better BRT. I want to say.
there's a lot of little changes like this that we can't get into all of them, but trust us, peppered within
Yeah.
all of this. There's like turning right rather than left to get better connections. There's a lot. All right.
Yeah, some, or you want to take this?
Sure. A lot of routes either used to go further than they do now and then were cut back during the pandemic and never restored, or get within a mile or two of another major destination that's otherwise not served by an existing route. So we looked for a lot of those opportunities where just small extensions in existing routes could get us a chance to pick up a lot more riders, to generate a lot more trips. Got a whole running list here. The big thing is basically how many extra drivers do we need simultaneously to make those happen. The Zero is a great example, or the Zero L, which right now runs peak direction only from I-25 and Broadway to Civic Center. We want to run it to Union Station on the north end and have it start down at Englewood on the south end. So we add a little bit of extra time on both and give more overlap on Broadway. And this happens all over the network.
Where's Brett? Yeah, he's missing his own party. This one's for Brett. The 32 and 26, very representative. They both end at the cemetery now, but they used to go further. Yeah. So we've re-extended them with modifications, especially to the 26, where it now dips down. So that's to take over for the 20, which again, Cody put out of its misery. So it takes over its section, and then I know that looks like whoop-to-doos. I promise you, a lot of thought. That is the most efficient way to reach the King Supers and Oak Station. Because often, and you might notice this at some stations, the bus bays are only accessible when the bus is entering at one direction.
RTD doesn't like straight curves. They want to force
Yeah.
a single direction.
So at like Oak Station, for example, buses have to enter from the west going east, or they can't get into the bus bays. Something's got to die. Sorry.
We have to find resources somewhere if we want to keep this from just getting really expensive.
One thing I noticed going through all the data that Joe compiled was that, like, for the CV, the EV, and the 116X, the majority of the ridership for those did not come from, like, the far-flung reaches of the district. They came from Federal Center. And so we want to kind of break those routes up, and, like, we could have maybe all-day service to Evergreen rather than 3 in the morning coming to Denver, 3 in the evening. So you can't really get to Evergreen at any point beyond the evening. and instead have all-day service, but also maintaining that route that people are definitely using, going from Federal Center to Civic Center. And yeah.
Okay, I can take this one. So if you notice in the service changes, we are now going to have a 1E/44E, rolls right off the tongue. No, we're not if we can help it. The 1E, and Chris, this one's for you. I know you've complained about it, but now you're going to see why, is going to become the 5. The 44 section is going to be taken out behind the barn and shop. It will be covered by the 49, but we don't have time for that lore. But this is going to be your Santa Fe connector. This will also make up for the loss of, is it the next one? Is it the next one? Big money, no whammies. No, it's not. But when we get to the 9, you'll see. So this will have 30-minute service, but 15-minute service between 8th and Union Station. Or no, 6th and Union Station.
So is that going down Santa Fe?
Yes. This is pretty, there's some slight tweaks, but this is pretty close to what the one already does. Because of the road geometries and not wanting a railroad crossing, in case BNSF, of all people, ruins the RTD bus network, it does dog legs to avoid the railroads. Now, sometimes we don't want to give it a whole new number, but it is substantial changes. There's a lot of this, and this is just the ones we feel comfortable showing. When we get to the miscellaneous slides, again, everything is getting changed. And we'll just give you a few samples, but there are a lot. The 9, yes. Y'all ever seen Harold and Kumar? Yeah, y'all ever seen Harold and Kumar? Oh, that's the 6, yes. So
I've
this,
never seen Harold and Kumar.
well, that's when we got, y'all ever seen Harold and Kumar go to White Castle? This is Keith and Cody go to Trader Joe's. It's good that we have them together because they interline for a lot.
Yeah.
I'll let you take, or do you want the 6?
Yeah, I'll just kind of.
Yeah, you do the 6, I'll do the 9.
Essentially, like between here, which is Colorado, and then over to essentially the Santa Fe area, so like Denver Health, these two would interline, the 6 and the 9. So instead of having just a 30-minute frequency bus, you'd have 15-minute frequency because you're using 2 buses. It's kind of an outer downtown trunk where we're finding little places where we can increase service without actually having to increase operators.
And this also interlines with the 5. So Chris, we're not screwing you by taking the 9. You're actually getting better service. You'll notice, again, sometimes the straightest route's not always the best. We need to do this dip to serve the hospital because that was the main reason for the 52, which we'll get to come down Bannock. We don't want it to come down Bannock, but we still need to serve the one reason that it did. So that's the little jaunt for the hospital. There's lots of examples like that throughout this. And it keeps serving Auraria. Right now, in that bird's nest that is the current bus network, the 6 turns off and goes into Auraria. We don't want that. We want it to stay on the trunk. But right now, if we were to just send it up Broadway, there isn't a good way to get from this area to Auraria if you're a student. So we have it overshoot Broadway and then go up. Now, the magic. This is probably, I'm really proud of this. I know Cody is. This is our baby. The SOP wanted to get rid of the 9. We said no. God, I mean, it barely resembles the old thing, but it's still the 9 in my heart. So right now, if you want to get over the Platte, just 1 or 2 neighborhoods over, you can't unless you want to transfer at least once, often twice, downtown. However, you have this 9 being completely redundant because it does what the W does, but worse. So what we've done is we've turned it into a crosstown. It interlines with the 6, and it terminates at Rose Medical Center. We're cutting the Lakewood connection. No one used it, because why would they? But we're getting even more again, this whole thing is just to get to grocery stores. That's most of what we do. So we send it up to Edgewater to pick up that.
Keith, there you go. That's your bus right there.
Yeah.
This is good. Make this happen.
Yeah, and then
This makes my life a lot
when
better.
not all diversions are bad, you'll notice this kink here. Originally, I just had it go straight because, ooh, straight line, good. And then Joe had to come in with his numbers. This stop here is most of the ridership on the line because there's a tower block that serves senior residents. So that is a huge trip generator. So again,
What street is that?
Rain, yeah.
Ninth and Grant?
Rain. It's a little neighborhood street.
Yeah. It's Juanita, Alaska.
But it is absolutely worth the few minutes. And now, if you want to get from Capitol Hill over the Platte, you can. You don't have to do a bunch of unnecessary stuff. 20, this is the part that survived. So I was originally going to send it way further over, keeping it on 23rd. And then again, we got the data and we saw the ridership. But the idea here is there's no point turning down Colorado and then being redundant next to the 15. When instead, you can go through City Park, and because it's a park, you only need like one stop at the zoo, but otherwise you just teleport through, come down, you still get the hospital connections, and you still serve East High School, which is a big trip generator. And then at Anschutz, instead of turning down to Colfax, you go through for better service. Simple changes, but there's a lot of tweaks like this. This was my idea, but I think you're better at this one, Joe.
So this, you can see, is just a mess. Lots of doubling back on itself. We're sharing space with the 40 on Colorado for whatever reason. Who knows? Weird route. So we looked at, okay, what stops are people using primarily? Where are people originating? And we can straighten this out, run it on Holly, access just as many, if not more, destinations, and then run all the way up to Rose Medical Center. And because of all the turns that we're getting rid of, you actually really don't add much in the way of resources to be able to run a longer route that makes more regional.
That route is my new child.
This is great
that
for
is
me. All of this is
amazing.
great for me.
Fills in the
The
grid.
46, that is.
It's like, who came up with that?
Yeah, that is amazing.
And a really weird aside that
I've been wanting a bus on Holly for so long.
down south here, the 73 pulls out to the east, which means that the 65, which runs on Monaco, also pulls to the east to make up for where the 73 vacated, and then the 46 pulls to the east to make up for where the 65 vacated. So by
It's like there was an
trying to kind of
earthquake there, the plate shifted, and they didn't change the buses.
so all
Colorado Station connection. But that's also way off to the side now, so.
Yeah, I mean,
and you have super frequent service on Hamden here. You've got the 105 and the 35 running there. You've got the 40, which is going to become BRT. And plenty of like crosstown connections.
Mississippi as well, and plus the 21. Again, this isn't going to be popular, but you know I had to do it to him. You got that. All right, 3L. I personally was not a fan of it, but given the resources we have available, it doesn't make a lot of sense to run a peak direction only limited when you could have better transfers with a 3 and an 83. The 20, the places it serves are now served by the 9 coming up to Edgewater, the 26 coming down south of the cemetery, and the 17 coming up to Enrel. So it's redundant, gone. 28 East, it is running like one block south of the 34, I think we're going to call it, but it's currently part of the 38, and like a few blocks north of the 43. Or so, again, northeast Denver's a mess, and we will be asking for help for that at the end. But if any bus there dies, by God, it will be the 28E. 65, we are not sure about. We met on Sunday for 8 hours, and a solid 2 of them were about the 65, and we are no closer to an answer. This is a bastard of a route, and we don't know what to do with it.
In a perfect world, it's geographically perfectly in between the 46 and the 73, and all the riders would just filter over. But the way the neighborhoods are set up is there's not a lot of pedestrian porosity there. So even though you only have to go a quarter mile to get to another route, most people can't walk that quarter mile because there is no way to get there.
Yeah, 65 is hard. The 83D is simple. Stop it with the whoop-de-woos. We're adults here. Follow the road. So no hard feelings there. 122X, we're just merging it with the 120. No need for those to be separate. New routes. This is what all the cuts have been for. And promise you it's worth it. All right, this was originally James's idea, but the 2, because they don't have a 2, so we're going to take that, and that is another crosstown, just like the 9, and we'll get to the 52, I promise. This is a crosstown, Cherry Creek to 41st and Fox, so if you aren't trying to go downtown, you shouldn't have to just to get through. It also takes really nice advantage of Park Avenue, which is like, it's just perfect, just sitting there, just got to take it. It also gets you higher service on this section of the 12.
What is
24.
the one where the double lane is? What road is that? Colorado?
That is York.
Is that York Josephine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the couplets. Yeah, this is a good one. It's a nice short one. Won't have compounding delays. I think it's less than 10 miles.
What's the southern terminus?
The southern terminus is Cherry Creek.
Yeah, my question is, have you looked into like extending it down Colorado to connecting with like the light rail at Colorado Station?
Yes, but then you're just doing what other routes already do without, and then you're getting compounding delays. We try and keep these short, not always, but when possible, if it's shorter, it'll be there more reliably. 18, James's Rhino ride.
Well, kind of.
Close.
One of them.
Half of it. This gets you even more service on that section of the 0 between I-25 up to Civic Center. But then, if you want to keep going north, right now, you have to change. So this just continues it straight up. The road nicely curves, and it takes you right to 48th and Brighton.
So, excuse me, so this follows the 0?
Up to Civic Center.
And then keeps going.
It just keeps on going north.
So if I just want to get downtown, I could take the 0 or the 18?
Yep, the 0 or the 18 or any other routes for certain sections.
Okay.
This
There-
gives Brighton a massive upgrade.
Great.
Well, you said this is James's Rhino, it doesn't go to Union Station.
That's a different bus. This is not James's
It's
Rhino.
close, but it is better. Next, Cody, this one's all yours. Cody
this is
had a
what I was-
brainwave on this.
This is what I was talking about earlier with the CV, EV, and the 116X, which they're, I think, canceling as per the SOP.
Can I give some background on that?
Uh,
CV comes from Conifer, EV comes from Evergreen, and the 116X
King-
comes from
King Carl.
And they all come into federal center.
Yeah. But if you look at the ridership, it is abysmal until you get to Federal Center, which is where everyone gets, like, I would say 3/4, if not
At
higher,
least, yeah.
get on here. And you can actually use this, instead of having a, 16 limited, you can actually have this bus be an express, because we, I can't remember who came up with the idea we wanted to connect it here at Federal and Decatur. So you'd have a really very quick connection here to the BRT. You stop one more time at Auraria, and then the last stop at Civic Center. So you have a very
This is
quick,
Express W line.
yeah,
Yeah, and redundancy for when they find railroad.
But
Yeah.
it also doesn't go to Union Station. It's
Yeah.
not a complete duplicate. Because right now, if you want to get from there to Civic Center, for Federal Center to Civic Center, you have to change. This is just super direct and really elegant.
Yeah, that would be huge, because they have I think it's the 120X coming in from the north.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've always wanted one that's like the 120X.
Come
but
down,
going west.
change, and you're on.
And
Yeah.
people have been
Yeah.
using the CV and EV like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like it's like, I don't know,
Secret
it's
route.
somebody's
But it's
secret.
very complicated to like learn. I didn't know
Mhm.
the CV and EV even took the same route.
Yeah.
So it's simplified.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, that's something I noticed when I was trying to get to Auraria from university, is that like it's like there's it's hard to get from like Broadway, anything Broadway or east of Broadway to Auraria.
It's hard.
Yeah.
If it
This
is
also
clever.
fixes a problem because 15L currently comes to Decatur Federal. As per, when it becomes BRT, it will just go to Union Station. So, that connection gets weakened.
So does this stop at Federal Decatur?
Yep.
Yes, it has
This is the
3
Broncos
stops
ride.
on this
What?
side.
This is Broncos ride.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
pretty much. But
We
all the
just
time.
solved it.
Yeah. We don't need
The
a
West
special
Side
event.
Broncos.
But yeah, you
That's all I care about.
You miss your party with the 26 and 32. There's no going back, Brett. You're old news.
Do we have any other questions?
Isn't that gonna compete with the W line though?
Not really.
Not really, because the W, mean, it obviously comes here.
Well,
So-
yeah, but it goes by Decatur there. I mean, it goes by the Howard, where CDOT headquarters is.
Yeah, but this is much more express.
It might compete with ridership going from.
So it's not gonna go
Center.
35 mile an hour like the W line then.
No, this will be as fast as the governors on the buses will let it go.
Yeah.
Just nonstop.
What are we looking at, like frequencies?
We were thinking probably 30 minutes for that.
Between 30 and 15,
Okay,
depending on
so
how much you free up.
15 minutes is, okay, between 30 and 50. So like more, not like, the abysmal frequencies of the CV EV116X.
No,
Right.
yeah, we're beefing up the places that really have that ridership.
Because all three of those buses essentially ran this route, that means there's 9 routes, or 9 trips each direction each day
Peak hours of
that
it.
we're getting for free.
Yeah.
So the additional resources to run this every
So
half hour is not that.
taking those 9 trips and spreading them out through the day.
Yes,
Is that-
pretty much.
Oh, okay.
And if
And then
anyone
adding
has
a
any
little-
idea of what actually happens to those buses and like the EV in the morning, like once it gets.
It's
to-
not published
I don't
what
know
those
where it
drivers do, yeah.
The
Oh.
GDT stakeout.
Well, there's a ton.
Pretty-
It's those three. It's
Put a wire on
the
someone.
3L. It's the 0. Like they're just sending buses into downtown in the morning and then they disappear and then they come back.
It's like
out
we have to
in the
think
evening.
beyond the old paradigm of commuters coming into downtown, like we thinking more all day type service.
Like I go to school at Auraria, and sometimes I have to be out at Federal Center. That's reverse commute. And right now, this would be great, but it's only peak direction right now. Okay, so this is, again, we are touching everything. 483, I got you, man. Name a bus. Someone name a bus.
22.
Got it. Yes.
38.
Yes.
52.
Yes.
73.
Yes.
236.
Yes.
Really?
402L.
Yes.
All right.
I have mapped. We are touching everything. 402L, you asked? That's now going to hit the Children's Hospital rather than doing a useless diversion and then heading up Santa Fe without stops. A second bus has hit the Children's Hospital. Now, so this was just, I was just listing them down and then I ran out of ideas. But these here are the ones that's like, we don't know what to do with. Like, I mean, we'll probably eventually come up with an idea, but if you got one, let us know.
Yeah, if anybody
Well, these
has
buses said,
gripes
"Oh, yeah,
about their
something
local,
else."
their local route, let us know. And
Call-
especially if it's one of these, because these we've run into some challenges.
Commerce City is a disaster. It is, but it's also a disaster in this road. You got buses weaving where they like come, 2 buses reach each other, overshoot, and then turn north and then weave back. And it's like, are we making braids here or are we moving people? 73, it's kind of weird. 43 and 34, again, northeast Denver is a mess. 65, yeah, that's a big problem.
Should I reorient Commerce City so like it spells letters or something? Like a secret message.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure nobody would notice.
yes, Thomas.
So a lot of what I've discovered, figuring out what these challenges are, is ground truthing. You get your ass on the bus, you look out, hopefully you get a bus without the windows covered. And you look out and you observe what's going on in the area while you're checking the Google Map aerial. Because this stuff is freaking difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a reason why we have spaghetti junctions when it comes to some of these lines.
Oh, I need to show you that there is one intersection at Commerce City that I need to show you that it causes so many of these problems because it's topologically, it doesn't look like it, but topologically it's an 8-way intersection, but you can't get from every road to every other. So yeah, I know. It's like, you're like, why doesn't it turn there? Because there's not a protected left. Like, there's so many little things. We only knew about the 17 diversion because Cody's wife works at NREL. Like, a lot of this is like just word of mouth. So if anyone has seen something, if you or someone you love has been affected by the Regional Transportation District bus system, let us know.
The reason we started with the routes we started with is because these are the ones where we had some of those ground truths already. And it's absolutely why we want to reach out to the bigger audience of what do you guys know that we don't.
Like, if anyone has any strong opinions on the 131, if you even know where that runs, I'm working on it. I'd love to hear what you think. Same with the 169.
What
Yeah,
about
I
that
do
weird
wanna
one that
know
goes
what you're
between Brighton and Denver Airport with 3 trips a day? 3 of which are in like 3 in the morning. It's like 1:45. I forget what it's called, but it's a
Brighton?
It goes from Brighton to the airport.
Yeah.
It has like 3 round trips a day. And the inbound trips to the airport are in the middle of the night.
It's good if you're working at the
That's to get work, is it?
Yeah, the 169 is
So
great,
else does
so
a
I
lot
want to
of
hear what
those-
you're
The
going to do.
169 is one of the longest in the network. I'm cutting it off at the mall on
Two things I
Parkway.
want to cover in conclusion. One, we haven't really talked about frequency yet, and we're not going to yet. But there's a lot of really sneaky routes in the network that are punching way above their weight for how often they come and how many people ride them. And so we want to give those the frequency they deserve. That's the 105, the 121, the 21, I think the 11. There's a bunch of routes, and Chris actually discovered some of this when he plotted out the ridership. I've taken that and put even more years of data
Flush
behind
it
it.
over here in the corner.
76.
Yeah.
6 increase.
Yes.
Yeah.
76
Yeah.
does way better than you'd think it
In,
would.
in boardings per trip, it outperforms the 31.
It,
Yeah.
it needs to be like way more frequent, at least between Belmar and Old Town Nevada. Like it's nuts, it's only running every 30 minutes.
Totally.
Realistically, at least from where I sit, usage per boarding, usage per trip is the best indicator we have of latent demand. If
Yeah.
people are riding it, despite the fact that it's running infrequently,
It does bias towards commuter routes that are peak
we
only,
need to
so we
change
just have to
yeah, we
filter
need to
those
adjust
out.
for that. But
yeah.
at the same time, that statistic generally is something that RTD should be looking more heavily at.
Yeah, so next steps for us, frequency is going to be a huge piece. Then the second thing is nothing that we've talked about here is operating at worse than 30-minute frequencies. Our baseline was we're not going to go any worse than 30 minutes. And everything we just showed you, the total workload increase that we expect to see is across the entire network, 7 additional operators per hour of service. So if you're working an 8-hour shift, that's 7 8-hour shifts. And if you want to do 18 hours of service, that's what, 14 to 20.
I think we're still in single-digit expansions of necessary operators.
Do you have a plan for the abysmal Sunday service problem on RTD more generally?
We're not cowards, so we're just going to run the bus. Like, I'm sorry, but like, the key to good transit ridership, to grow it, is to say, I am going to send out this bus and no one is going to ride it. But I am going to keep taking that loss until people realize that it's actually good. And if you build it, they will come.
Or we could just run buses to Bronco Stadium from everywhere in the district.
We got you, man. We got you.
Put Union Station on top of the Bronco Station.
Yeah.
Second level.
Madison Square Gardens, but upside down.
Yeah.
This is, you'll notice we never touched on, I'll let you guys start.
If you have any ideas or you want to help, how can we get in contact with you?
DM us on Slack. Just straight up.
Business card here.
I need to get on that.
He's got that dog in him.
Yes. You'll notice we didn't talk about any of the like really big ones because like we already know what's up with these. People are talking about the 40. So we put this at the end in case we didn't have time, which it doesn't look like we do.
We're
Right?
too long-winded to be trusted with this.
Yeah, everyone already knows what's wrong with that. Ain't no one talking about the 52. Ain't no one talking about, does anyone remember I mentioned the 131? That's actually right here. Yep. 66 is down here, 169 is here. Everything. Nothing will go untouched. Hell, we're even extending the 22 back up to Federal Center. Yeah. I mean, if anyone just want a lightning round, name a route, and I'll tell you if there's any changes to it.
100.
100 is a mess. I will not touch the 100. What?
0 for 1.
Oh.
62.
60. Well, we don't have a.
Well,
Come on.
We're creating the 125.
Yes,
to do
we
some of the
we
stuff
didn't
about
have the
100.
slides on this.
Oh, yeah.
125 will run from Federal Center over here and then up to Wheat Ridge Ward.
So connecting 2 ends or 2 points along the W
I
and
have
the
a
G
question
line.
Yes.
that's always puzzled me. Bus service on Hampton.
Yes.
Connections to DTC. Like I know someone who would take a bus on Hampton to commute to DTC, but there is no available bus route. That
Have you
like,
heard the good news?
Now that the 35.
The 35 is back.
Yeah.
Pre-pandemic, that's what it did. And now it is back. and we're debating just on a few details of like, do we want to hit one apartment complex or supermarket, little things like that. But yes, we are so back.
It won't be a single seat rack, but it'll be one
Why can't we just put the grocery store on the bus?
Yeah.
Keep going, keep going.
Rock and roll.
That's
I think,
pretty.
I think we skip all these for now. and
Yeah.
This is a future presentation.
That's it.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say about the 52?
Yeah, you guys didn't put the slide in for the fit. Look, okay, we are not leaving until
We're turning the 52 into an east-west crossing that stays north. of
it does
Denver,
not
and
turn.
then replacing-
What?
It's an east-west crosstown that stays north of Denver instead of diving into downtown and then
No.
running south.
No,
We're replacing the connections with other
No.
routes that are more local.
Yeah.
What? No, that runs right by my house.
Can I tell you a funny anecdote about the 52?
There's a lot of funny. It's a fun route.
I used to work for the Rio Grande Railroad.
Okay.
The bank building downtown at 15th and Arapahoe. Well, I'd drive down a lot because I could park on railroad property for free and walk 5 blocks, you know, underneath the viaduct. But every once in a while I'd ride the bus. So this one 5th of May, I decided I'd ride the bus. And something happened, I had to stay late. I left at 9 o'clock that night. I got on the 52, headed toward Arvada. The bus driver and me were the only 2 sober people in that bus. Everybody else had bottles of tequila, they were passing around, they were singing all kinds of songs. It was a happy bus ride.
The 52 is great. So yeah, now it's going to go to 38th and Blake, and because if you really want more service there, that's 19 territory. But right now, if you want to get from one side of the rail yards and I-25 to the other, tough luck, you're going through downtown. Same with the 9, that's what the point of the 2 is. Like, generally, if you aren't going into downtown right now, you might want to
I think he's going to convince you.
Okay, well if you want
That's the
to,
19.
Part of the route, and then we replace
So I
service
live in
everywhere.
Baker,
Yeah.
and the 52 goes down Bannock,
Yep.
and there's always people waiting for the bus to get in there, and it's rather than taking the 0 and having to deal with the 0, the 52, first of all, also services Denver Health.
Did you not see
That's
that?
what this. Yeah,
That's
so
what the
we're-
6 is for.
We're using the 6 and the
But does
9
the
to
6
create.
Okay, does the
15
6
minutes
go
service.
down Bannock?
yeah.
We have it going partially.
Here.
Stair steps its
Yeah.
way over, right?
Like essentially between the 6 and,
Is that Santa Fe?
Yes.
yeah, this is Santa Fe and Gallup.
So where's Bannock?
Bannock is right next
It's
to
right in
Providence.
line with the little bump into Denver.
Yeah.
So like this stop here, that wedge, is most of the ridership for the 52 there. Again, we can have a bus to everyone's house and it'll come once a year. But tough choices have to be made.
Well,
And
all
this
I know
gets
is
it.
that bus gets used a lot. I see it. There's people there all the time. Our neighborhood has a group like beautifying the bus stops in the neighborhood. So it does get used. It services the Baker Towers, which is DHA housing. So.
I mean,
What if instead we just make it a 2-stop direct from Old Town to Alameda?
pretty.
We're gonna have to break it up no matter what.
Okay.
What are you gonna do about 52 comes in northwest Arvada? And if you take that away up there,
I think this is a great conversation over drinks.
Yeah.
We're gonna curtail. We're gonna save the federal adventure for another night when we got more time. I think tonight.
I
we're
got
gonna
a map, so if anyone wants to see
Yeah.
a specific map,
So
just
tonight
ask.
we're gonna go to Lincoln's because it's cheap and it's close and it's fun.
It's cash only, right?
No, better not be.
I think it is.
It is cash only.
So never mind. We're gonna go to Ice House.